Welcome to Punchline Talks Politics. My name is Mark Owen, and today my special guest is Chris Nelson. He's the current Gloucestershire PCC. He's standing under the Conservative flag. He was elected in 2021, and he's just declared he's standing again. Hi, Chris. Nice to see you.
Hi, Mark. Good to see you too.
Now, we've known each other for quite some time as well. It's been a real joy working with you over the last couple of years. I've got to ask you, why are you standing again? Why put yourself through all this?
Well, I think I've got a good record. I've achieved all my 6 manifesto pledges that I promised in 2021. But the force I inherited had serious problems, and I've worked hard to sort those out. But there's still a long way to go, and I need another 4 years. I've only had 3 years with this appointment, another 4 years to give me a chance to get the force to the level at which both me and the Chief Constable want to see it at.
Now, you promised in your manifesto that you would recruit 300 extra additional police officers. Your main competitor, Martin Searle, says, you've been accused that is not the case. What have you got to say about that?
Well, I promised 300 extra police. I've delivered over 400 police officers, police community support officers, and frontline police staff. And when I came into this job day one, the chief said there's a bad report coming in from His Majesty's Inspectorate. We'd have 6 inadequates. And we needed to do a lot of work. And the only way of solving that was getting more personnel into the force. And instead of more officers, or he obviously wanted some more officers, but he also wanted police staff, because a lot of his existing warranted officers were sat in police officer in police staff roles, and therefore recruiting more police staff would allow those operational officers to deploy on the front line. So we had to change the mix, and that's why we have the mix that we have. But we've got over 400 extra police.
Well, the 300 extra, they're not 300 extra police officers, though, are they?
No, there's about 140, 150 extra warranted officers, 20 more PCSOs, police community support officers, and over 250 police staff. And we also have a new enhanced operating model, which is 18% more effective than the previous model. That delivers the equivalent of over 200 extra warranted officers on the ground. So when you add those 200 to the 150 and the 20, you end up with well over 300 officers that I promised.
Okay, well, I'm going to leave that particular part there. We've also talked before in connection with different political parties. So obviously Martin Searle is flying under the flag, no longer an independent, but as under the Liberal Democrat flag. You fly your flag under Conservatives. Now, it was the Conservatives that cut the police in the first place, 20,000 police officers. Really difficult to replace all that experience, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, if you think back to 2010, when the Conservatives and the Lib Dems formed a government, it was just after the great financial crisis of 2008. Labour had left them a treasury with no money in it. So the government had to make cuts. Those were the years of austerity. I think the cuts they made on the police force were far too deep, far too extensive. So when I came into this job, I was determined to correct that. And that's why my number one focus has been recruiting more police, hence over 400.
Now, Martin Searle has been sniping from the sidelines for quite some time over, last couple of years. What's your, how do you feel about that? Has he got a point?
No, I mean, he was in post for 9 years. He's got an absolute dreadful record. He dropped the force into special measures, a very serious situation. He built one building in the wrong place, another building was at the wrong time, just at the time that the force fell into special measures, which meant we had over 300 and 400 officers redeployed around the force as this building was rebuilt. just at the time where they needed to be where they were, focusing on how to get the force out of special measures. Over his time, antisocial behaviour was one of the worst in the country. And if you look at the figures, that's from 2012, just at the moment he took over. And it's taken me a while to get the cut of antisocial behaviour to be more than 50%. He constantly underestimated the number of crimes within the county. He thought we were safer than we were. And he didn't bid for extra government money that I've got over the last year, an extra 15 million. And he didn't even bother with the Safer Streets initiative because he thought our crime wasn't bad enough, that our hotspots weren't bad enough. His governance was extremely poor. So he's got a dreadful record. He was in power for 9 years, and yeah, he'll fight on that. I'll fight on my 6 manifesto pledges that I've delivered.
Okay, well, let's talk about, he's not here to defend himself, so we'll have to park that bit particularly there. I'm sure he'll come back. Obviously, we're a business publication, and one of the main things I hear and what we're really worried about is obviously business crime, fraud in particular, retail crime as well. Chris, it's gone absolutely crazy. Shoplifting, nothing seems to be done, and police don't turn up, and if they do turn up, nothing happens. What can you say?
Well, that enhanced operating model I talked about is delivering more arrests, more solved crimes, faster response. We're seeing more officers on the street. So that's helping dealing with all types of crime. On shoplifting, which we've had spikes, I'm doing all sorts of things, working with government, with the constabulary to improve things. And on, for instance, online scams, the force has reduced online scams by 30%, which is a major improvement. Just on Twitter today, I've copied a tweet from the National Crime Agency, had a major hit on a cyber crime unit. And it's fantastic when you see things like that. So there's a lot going on. Yes, there's a lot more that needs to be done. And that's another reason why I'm offering myself for re-election, so that I can have the privilege of serving another 4 years.
Well, what about rural crime as well? That is obviously on the rise. You know, Gloucestershire itself is a very rural county. Again, you know, it doesn't appear from the people I talk to, the police don't turn up. They just get a number, Chris.
Well, rural crime, recently we cut the cost of rural crime by 29%. My 400 extra police includes a doubling of the specialist rural crime team who specialise in things like hair coursing and poaching and animal related crimes. I'm doing more police stations with the fire stations, combining those so that we see more officers visible in our rural communities, and more special constables as well coming from our rural communities, so people can effectively be their little parish police officer for that area.
Now, I've heard through the grapevine that we're short of detectives as well. How are you going to fix that?
Well, I'm in discussions with the Home Office with the Met. The Met's underperformed on its recruitment targets because of the situation the Met's in. They're not recruiting as many people as they've been funded for. So the Home Secretary has transferred the money across the 43 forces. So I'm negotiating for some extra officers, and that'll increase our numbers even more than I've already done. And then what I'd like to see is a bit of a radical overhaul about the way we train our detectives. So if you have some young police officers who may not have a great deal of experience but show some nous in inspections, put them into the detective organizations and do some on-the-job training and develop them on the job, rather than waiting until they've got all their formal qualifications, which can take an age. We have to do something radical because the whole country is suffering from a shortage of detectives. It's a hard job. And for instance, dealing with things like male violence against women and girls, you need good detectives to deal with perpetrators, catch them, and then convict them.
But doesn't this go back to the whole Tory cuts at the very beginning when we spoke about 20,000 experienced officers leaving the force, all the detectives. You cannot sort of cull the force of such an amount of people and then expect them to come back or build it up so quickly.
No, that's a fair comment, and I've been working on this job for 3 years. The 400 extra police that I've talked about is a 21% increase in the overall establishment of the force. It's the biggest increase of any force in the country. So I think I've done a good job. But clearly there are more things that need to be done, and that's why I'm offering myself forward to be re-elected.
Okay, well, you and I have touched on in the past, as I did with your predecessor, police horses. Okay, I want to talk about police horses. How many police horses have we got now, Chris, and how many more do we need?
Well, we've got 6 horses, not 6 riders. They're training up some more riders to go with the horses. And
how much does that cost to train up a rider?
well, I'm looking.
Do these guys already ride a horse, or do they?
Some do.
Some.
I think most that want to ride police horses have got riding experience, but just like with the horse, there are specialist skill sets that officers have to learn. And what I want to see is these horses being used more in dealing with antisocial behaviour, which is my another one of my main focus, and approaching difficult to reach communities where antisocial behaviour can be quite tough. And I've just got another £1 million from the government to deal with antisocial behaviour hotspots from this April. And within Cheltenham and Gloucester, we have too many of those. And I would expect to see our horses and riders being used a lot more in those areas. And you'd be surprised at how people who, if they see normally police officers patrolling through their area, won't come out and talk to them. But if they hear the clip clop of horses' hooves on their streets, they come out, the doors open, conversations start, and that's the start of the police earning their respect and confidence.
But if you've got police officers on the beat who are burning the midnight oil, if there's something else happens in London, we all know the police get dragged over there or recruited over there or sent over there, or anywhere there's a major incident, shall we say, and rightly so. And the other the other officers then have to step up the plate, and obviously stretching their resources, stretching the manpower, stretching the hours these guys have to do, PCOs and the police. You got 6 horses. That's a lot of horses, Chris. That could be, I mean, how much is a horse and a rider? 120,000 quid each. That's nearly £500,000 on horses, let alone horse feed.
But on when horses deploy to other force areas, that we get paid for that in mutual aid. And I'm also looking at a wealthy donor who's offered to pay for parts of the horse activity. So that will make the whole thing better value for money. And yeah.
A sponsored horse. Maybe we might have Punchline written on the back of one day. You never know. Chris Nelson, thanks ever so much for joining Punchline Talks today, and all the very best as well.
Thank you.